Hello, guys, and welcome to a special edition wherein we talk with Indian journalist uh, and a PhD in cricket, Dr. Boria Majumdar, who will update us with all the questions that are pertaining to Indian women's cricket. What are the updates? What happened at the AGM, and a lot more. Boria, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Yash. Thank you. I mean, good work being done by you all. I've read the magazines that you had kindly sent me. I follow some of the pieces, including the one by Ananya and Mitali. So good work being done there. Well done.
Thank you very much, Boryada. In the last few months, we've seen a lot of men's cricket happening. We've seen a full-fledged IPL taking place in a part of the world in Dubai, Sharjah, Abu Dhabi. A lot of bio bubbles being created. A lot of international cricket happening, especially with also the Indian men. If not for everyone, the Indian men, and they are now on a 2-month tour to Australia. The half, the entire half is done. 3 more tests to go, but a lot of plans are there. We know the FTPs for Indian men. We have England coming up. We have an entire IPL. We have a lot of tournaments before we actually have the T20 World Cup here in India. So the entire FTP for the men looks set to be out in public, but nothing for the women. That's the major question. A lot of fans are asking this. Has there been any discussion at the AGM? Has there been any inside? Has there been any discussion in the BCCI itself? When do we see Mithali Raj? When do we see Smriti Mandana? When do we see Harmanpreet Kaur back on the field? That's the major question a lot of fans are asking.
Very
Where will you?
pertinent question. Very pertinent question. Let's just go back a little bit. And this is based on fairly authentic information. So you can sort of trust me on that. The first point is, what was the men's itinerary? What was the women's itinerary? The men's IPL happened. The women's T20 challenge happened in Dubai at the same time. Now, that is a different debate, that should it have been more games? Should it have been a bigger women's T20 challenge? That's a different debate. We will get into that if you want to. But both tournaments happened at the same time, and that was the resumption of cricket in India in a way. Before that, there was no cricket. The men's IPL in Sharjah and Dubai, the women's T20 challenge in Sharjah and Dubai. At the same time, what was the plan? The plan was for the men to travel to Australia, bio bubble to bio bubble. And the plan for the women, and I can guarantee you this, if you go and ask, you named Mitali, you ask Mitali. If you name Smriti, you ask Smriti. I can give you Jhulan, because these are the people I have spoken to, Veda. If you ask them, the plan was for them to travel to Sri Lanka from UAE or Dubai. The plan did not go ahead because both boards, they were discussing quarantine regulations and requirements, and Sri Lankan government, and by the way, this is not a board decision, it's a health ministry government decision. They couldn't come to a sort of consensus on quarantine requirements in Sri Lanka. That is why the tour did not go ahead in mid-November, as a result of which the girls came back to India. Number two, you mentioned the Indian tour to Australia. They were supposed to tour Australia and New Zealand ahead of the World Cup, which was supposed to be in February. When ICC pushed it back, and by the way, the BCCI, as in Saurav, was I'm quoting Saurav here because I've spoken to him on this. Saurav is on record in the public domain saying that New Zealand may have gone ahead with the World Cup because COVID is very much in control. And if you see, the Super Smash is being held as we speak, and that's for both men and women. So if you can hold that kind of cricket, you could have easily done the World Cup. That's his perspective, but that's not our concern here. The concern is that the World Cup got pushed back as a result. And this is very important. A lot of people have asked questions on social media, tagging me that, oh, what happened? These two tours were supposed to happen. What's the plan for women in blue, etc., etc. Very fair point. But the real reason that the Australia and New Zealand tours were pushed back is because those boards, and not the BCCI, those boards, and you need to know it is the host board's prerogative, those boards wanted the tours pushed back to when the World Cup is ahead of that. So basically to October, November, December of 2021. That's when Australia and New Zealand will host the Indian women's team. Okay, so I've answered that part. Having said that, that doesn't mean that our women won't play. Absolutely not. If the men play, the women play, and I've pushed the BCCI mandarins to get an answer. Now, here's the roadmap from what I understand. I've been told in very clear-cut terms, and this is in the public domain. People are listening to us, so you can hold me to this, and I will go and question the BCCI subsequently, because this is what I've gotten from the BCCI, that they are holding the Syed Mushtaq Ali Trophy in January with 6 bio bubbles, including one in Calcutta. Hyderabad will come here. 6 bio bubbles, and that tournament actually marks the resumption of cricket on Indian soil. There are these little tournaments happening: Bengal T20 Challenge, Jharkhand, Pondicherry, etc. वो आप ignore करो. So the real resumption of cricket under the wings of the BCCI starts with the Mushtaq Ali Trophy. If that is a success, and that's between 10th of Jan and 31st of Jan, if that is a success, I have been categorically told two things will happen in February. One, the resumption of either the Ranji Trophy or more men's domestic cricket, and the start of women's domestic cricket. Both at the same time will happen in February. I can also tell you, don't ask me who's given me this info, that the BCCI is also in touch with the Sri Lankan board. Chamari Atapattu, who played the Women's T20 Challenge, has spoken to the Sri Lankan board as well. So there is a cricketer's perspective also corroborating what I'm telling you, that there is detailed conversation going on between India and Sri Lanka, whether, because Sri Lanka will host their women's domestic stuff in Feb, so will India. That's the plan. So if that is the case, if the Indian team can travel to Sri Lanka in March is the plan. Also, talks are on with the ECB and the English establishment as to when our girls can play England by traveling to that country, something that was supposed to happen in September but did not go through. And then obviously April, May will be the Women's T20 Challenge. I expect it will be bigger than what we saw in Dubai. Finally, the Apex Council, the BCCI is pretty keen, very keen. The president, for example, is very keen that our women play test cricket. And I've spoken to multiple girls. I've spoken to multiple players. Mitali Jhulan on record today morning. They are extremely excited. So the idea is, if Australia and England can play an Ashes test match, so can our women play a test match. Apex Council will decide that. But if I understand the pulse from what I followed the AGM yesterday, there is a very real likelihood that you will see Indian women's test cricket in 2021. So I hope I've been able to clarify some of the doubts.
I think so, yes. So what I expect is the first international tour, if everything goes all right, will be to Sri Lanka in March. We play England in say June, July, post which a few of our girls.
I am not giving you a date for England, but yes, that is number two. There is also talk with Bangladesh, because Jahanara Alam, for example, again, a player's perspective, I know there were talks between, because they found out from the BCB if India could undertake a tour to Bangladesh, because they too will start their domestic cricket in Feb. So to put it bluntly, international cricket should resume in March, followed by April, May of the Women's T20 Challenge. And also, let me tell you, no off-season in 21, unless COVID takes over our world again, which I don't think will happen, because we now know how to go on with sport with bio bubbles, etc. These new strains notwithstanding, because science will win. Vaccinations will happen. So all of that is in place and will happen. So I can tell you this, that the BCCI's plan is there will be no off-season, and almost right through the year, our girls will also play in 2021.
So a few things getting confirmed here. We will have many international series, no domestic off season, not at all. And plus there are the murmurs which are around test cricket. We will potentially see test matches happening for the Indian women in 2021.
Correct.
That's the three major questions which a lot of people had potentially are getting answered. Plus, we've also heard that there is some contingency planning going on. If suppose domestic cricket does not take place, the players are likely to get compensated.
No, that's not like that. I'll clarify that. Before I clarify that, just to add to your point about, this is what is in the pipeline, I actually spoke to Jhulan Goswami this morning. She's come back from NCA yesterday night, and she and I are meeting in my museum on Monday to basically discuss, because she's family to me. So Jhulan confirmed to me that she's again going back to the NCA for a 3-week rehab in Jan. Why? Because she too has heard the same thing, that from February it is expected to be fairly non-stop cricket, so that she is in full shape, back to full fitness by the end of Jan. So it is not me telling you alone. Senior cricketers have also heard the same things that I'm telling you, and that is basically going to be the plan. Okay, now coming to the issue of compensation, what is going on there? It is not about some players getting compensated or some things not happening. Please take it that this year it will not be a complete domestic season. Can't be. It's a strange year, and it will be the same for men and women, mostly for age group tournaments 16, 19, 23. So 16, 19, 19, 23, and also some stuff for the senior players. Any tournament that doesn't happen for age group or seniors, men and women, whichever doesn't happen, both men and women will get compensated, is what I know. That is something that was discussed in the AGM, and gender neutrally, both men and women, whichever tournament, under 16, under 19, under 23, whatever doesn't happen, or for the seniors, whatever tournament doesn't happen, those players who would have played would get compensated. There is a question here. How do you identify a Yash Lahoti was in the team or a Boria Majumdar is in the team? Or for that matter, because there are issues of corruption, right? So if you
Yeah.
pay money to the BCCI or some association, where is the money? Did the player get it? From what I know, the list will be asked for, that who was your potential team, and that list will then be sent to the board, and those players will be compensated. So it's not as if the purse of 10 rupees will be given to you and you will disburse it to whoever you like based on randomness. No, there will be accountability, and I'm pretty much sure that we will ask these questions. Stuff will be uploaded on the website. So the association, so CAB, for example, my state association will have to send X number of players, and based on that, those players will be compensated. That's the plan, both for men and for women, as far as compensation is concerned.
So there is one more thing about international tours which was supposed to happen, and this is something you have tweeted in the month of September, that there will be a South Africa series. We have a women's T20 challenge. What happened to that particular South Africa series? You have answered Sri Lanka, so I'm just talking about the
And
South
West
Africa
Indies, and West Indies, South
and the West
Africa
Indies.
and West Indies. So both those
Yes.
countries refused to tour India based on the COVID situation. And I'm putting it on record. Both those countries, South Africa and India, were supposed to, and West Indies rather, were not willing to play India at that point in time. So, and I've asked these questions of the BCCI. Believe me, I mean, I don't answer them on social media, because social media at some level has become toxic, flippant, and foolish. So that's okay. I mean, people sort of make aspersions and take pot shots. That's okay. All of us are in the business of promoting the game. Our only interest, Yash or me, I don't think Yash makes money out of women's cricket zone. And I don't make a single buck out of this. There's no question. Our whole interest here is to promote the game. And if you can go and ask any Indian women's cricketer, go ask Mitali Raj, Jhulan Goswami, Smriti Mandana, Veda Krishnamurti, Poonam Yadav, anyone you ask, they will all tell you that the whole idea of all of us getting together, and I speak to them fairly regularly, is all of us coming together to promote the game. Now, there was another, I mean, if you see a strand, people keep asking on social media, why did our players play this women's T20 challenge, 4 games, 3 games? They should have played the Big Bash. For God's sake, no. Why? They shouldn't have, because 3 players would have played the Big Bash. Harmanpreet Kaur, Smriti Mandhana, maybe Jemima Rodriguez, and Poonam Yadav. So 4 players. If 4 players played the Big Bash, frankly, would it have added anything to the rest of the girls who played in the women's T20 challenge? The answer is no. There were at least 45 players who traveled to Dubai and were part of the bigger ambit of women's T20 challenge. Now you can tell me, why was it not 8 games or 10 games? Fair point. We would want that to happen in 21. And I am also told that Saurav Ganguly and his board, Jay Shah, Saurav Ganguly, all of them, Arun and Jayesh George and whoever, Brijesh Patel, they want a franchise based WIPL in 22. And frankly, we will push for that because it is the job of the media, you, me, to create that murmur. They are also debating, do they have that many number of good domestic players? So and in an informal chat, my suggestion was, go with lesser teams. Mitali Raj on my show Inspiration said, don't go with 8 teams, go with 5, go with 6. So did Smriti Mandhana. So the point is, if you do not want to go ahead with 8 teams, I understand that because you don't have the standard yet. It's a catch 22. You will not have the standard till you start it. You will not start it till you not have the standard. So you've got to find middle ground. What is middle ground? Middle ground is start with 5 teams. So for God's sake, 2 parts to that. Don't take pot shots about the women's T20 challenge and say, अरे बिग बैश क्यों नहीं खेल लिया? अरे नहीं खेलेगा यार, बिकॉज वो तीन तीन लोग खेल के कोई फायदा नहीं होता है. अगर आज 3 प्लेयर जाके बिग बैश में खेल लिया, so फायदा नहीं होता है. And second point, just like why is Ishant Sharma not being sent to Australia now to replace Mohammad Shami? Because there is a hard 14-day quarantine. So if you played the women's T20 challenge and then wanted to travel to Australia for the women's big bash, it wasn't possible because you would have had to go through the hard quarantine. So these are the realities of the new normal. So what we need to push is, hopefully the BCCI will give us a bigger women's T20 challenge in 21, and we will get a WIPL with maybe 4, 5 or 6 franchises in 22. That is the ideal scenario that each one of us who want women's cricket to progress should strive for. So don't keep taking pot shots. By you taking pot shots, the women's game will not progress. And frankly, Yash and me take pot shots at us, doesn't matter, because if you take pot shots at us, will the game benefit? And are you going to tell us that you guys are crusaders who will try and improve the game and we have no commitment? I'm sorry, that is not the case. We are trying to do every bit that is possible from our end, in touch with the cricketers, to try and further the cause of the women's game.
So you have answered a lot of these questions. One question which I want to ask is: fine, the domestic season starts next month. Do we see a one-day competition or do we see a T20 competition?
I don't know that.
Again,
I don't have an answer to that. I would expect a one-day competition because that's the first World Cup. At the same time, I actually expect both. I would expect there will be these two, obviously not the longer format, but your first World Cup in February of 2022 is the 50 over World Cup. So if it is the 50 over World Cup, you've got to get Mithali on the park. You've got to get that team, her team. She's still the leader of that side. That's why I said Mithali. So get that team on the park. There's no debate that you've got to get those girls who will be part of your World Cup schema on the park as soon as possible. Make no mistake about it. I think that's a realistic expectation from our standpoint, and I think that'll happen. See, these girls are extremely motivated. I'll tell you what Mithali did. Mithali, when the moment she, and again, we were in conversation, Mithali, the moment I had actually told her that the women's T20 challenge was happening, you can go get a corroboration. She traveled from Hyderabad to Bangalore on her own, hired a trainer, hired a coach, and started training on her own in Bengaluru. So that is commitment. Smriti Mandhana told me that the day she went out to train after she heard that, okay, it's starting, she was very apprehensive what will happen to her batting, etc., because she'd not played for such a long time. And then she said it was like cycling. The moment she hit bat on ball, and she loved it. So as a batswoman, it was terrific for her. So, we need to give these ladies the backing that they deserve. At the same time, this has to be done in synergy with the BCCI. So compensation for the tournaments that do not happen, don't expect everything to happen. For the tournaments that do happen, I think white ball 50 and 20 over formats should happen. We should push for a longer and more matches in terms of WIPL. If a 10-team men's IPL can happen in 22, so can a women's IPL with 4 or 5 or 6 teams. That's again a very realistic proposition. The BCCI should be able to market it. Okay, on record, they were able to raise sponsorship of 20 crores for the women's T20 challenge, Yash Lahotis. 20 crores. That is no mean money. For the women's T20 challenge, I think Jio paid 8 crores. and the rest of the sponsors. There were multiple other sponsors also. Jio was the title sponsor. So they all paid together 20 CR for the women's T20 challenge. That tells you what? That the game is now marketable, the game can be monetized, and there is a definite future and commercial potential to the women's game that was earlier not there. That makes me, as an ardent follower, analyst, crusader, whatever you want to call it, for the women's game, extremely hopeful for 2021.
That's what everyone is asking actually, that why is the BCCI not having a 8 team IPL or a 6 team IPL or an auctioned IPL? Let me not use the number of teams, because that's what the people inside, or the people who understand the game, or the people who know that how many players are available who can be of that standard can answer. So an X team IPL but an auctioned IPL, why is it not happening?
Okay,
A,
let me
is the
answer that.
BCCI,
Let me
yeah,
answer that.
is the
It is not something that, something that will be congealed in my terrace today and will be implemented tomorrow. It is not like that. It's very easy to say, "Arey, kyun nahi hua?" Saurav Ganguly's board took over in October. COVID took over our world in March. Even the men's IPL, which is already a structured tournament, was almost certain not to go ahead, and then the T20 World Cup got cancelled, and they managed to fit it in. To hold a new tournament, have you seen any kind of cricket in India? The answer is no. Even now, it is a COVID infested world. The earliest you can possibly do it is 22. For me, what is very important is resumption. We want resumption of the women's game in Feb as early as possible. Let the girls get back to the park and the pitch and start playing. Let international tours start in March. Then the women's T20 challenge in April, May. Then can India make it to England in June, July? Obviously, there will be October, November, December, Australia, New Zealand, followed by the World Cup in Feb of 22. So there will be continuous cricket from now till for the next 1 year, leading to the World Cup, which is in February of 2022. Followed by that, one would expect the BCCI that if it's doing a 10-team IPL, and I for one am extremely positive about our world in the second half of 21, because if 30-40 crore Indians are vaccinated by the first half, as the government has claimed, there is no reason to believe that we will be as bogged down as now. No, we won't be. So even if biosafety hygiene protocols are in place, we will be definitely doing a lot more activities with all of these protocols, which are part of our lives now. So the board can definitely start thinking of a full-fledged WIPL. As Yash said, number of teams will depend on the feasibility. So their Apex Council and Shantaji and all of them will come in. I don't care, 4 or 5 or 6, but I want to see a full-fledged WIPL as early, which is the earliest feasibility is 2022.
That's what everyone has been asking, that okay, and Boryada says that the earliest we can see is 2022, maybe an auction in 2021 later, in the late part
आप
of it.
ये देखो ना यश, sorry to interrupt, आप ये देखो, they wanted to add 2 men's teams in 21. Can they do that? No, they
No,
can't. Will they be able to do a mega auction in 21 and do it? No. So अभी आप नहीं कर सकते हो, अभी आप मेगा ऑक्शन भी नहीं कर सकते हो, no teams added. So it will basically go through the same motion, and वो जो structure आपके पास है 8 टीम वो खेल लेगा. So that's what is going to happen in 21. 22, you expect 10 team men's IPL, and you would also expect a 5-6 team women's IPL. Ideally, that is your scenario that we are talking about, provided science triumphs against COVID, which there is every reason to believe will happen.
there is one more question that a lot of people are having, that because the BCCI scheduled the women's T20 challenge at the last moment, the IPL was still, there were talks in June, July that we may have the IPL when the T20 World Cups get scrapped, which is only a formality. So we will have an IPL during the T20 World Cups time. But because the BCCI had the women's T20 challenge at the last moment, and it clashed with the women's with the women's Big Bash League, a lot of Aussie players did not participate. Will we see
So
that?
when would you do it?
No, no,
In the
no. So
in
I,
the in
no,
the
no,
year that has gone by, there was no option for the BCCI. Absolutely not. I
absolutely.
can tell you that on Saurav's birthday, when I spoke to him on Inspiration, which was 8th of July, he was super jittery on the men's IPL. When the Chennai COVID cases happened, the 14 guys or 13 tests, whatever that was, and
Yeah.
Ruturaj and Deepak and these guys getting tested positive, there was tremendous alarm within the BCCI कि हमने तो कर लिया. Now what? Can we pull this off? So this clash was not something that anybody envisaged or expected. My whole Twitter debate with Alisa Healy, who I've got the greatest respect for, was there was no other option. This is not ideal. I mean, I'm not I'm not an advocate that Australian players wouldn't play. Of course they will play. They need to play. They're the best in the world. We need them to play so that the standard is high. But at the same time, if you say that we wouldn't have, sort of at that point in time, we wouldn't hold it, then when would you do it? If you do not do it in the same period as the men's IPL, when bio bubbles were there, so they lifted the players, got them into the bio bubbles when the men left. Sharjah, the men moved out. So all of that was planned. There was no other option in 2020. But I can say this with fair degree of certainty that the BCCI will definitely not want to schedule a women's tournament, women's T20 challenge or IPL or whatever you want to call it, which will be a clash with the Big Bash. Because the Big Bash is already the well-established elder sister, and we want to aspire to that. And by the way, if the Indian board launches a full-fledged WIPL, I'm fairly confident we will be getting as close to the Big Bash in a couple of years with our commercial might, whether it is in terms of standard, whether it is in terms of broadcast, whether it is in terms of sponsorships. So that is the ideal platform, but I don't envisage another clash unless the world sort of completely gets muddled again, which I don't think will happen because we've also learned therapeutic science, vaccines, whatever you want to call it. We have also learned to live with COVID and try and do our stuff around it while not underestimating the virus.
So my idea, Boryada, is that we will have the Women's T20 Challenge again this year in 2021.
Correct.
Potentially a bigger one. Potentially a
Correct.
bigger one, which we all expect to happen. In May, that is during the playoffs of the men's, and potentially just before that or after that. That's an
Yeah.
idea. But
Yeah.
is the BCCI planning to fix that up in the next 2 months so that right now, because there are no tournaments during that time, that all the boards it can ask and can have it fixed? Otherwise, once we have seen this in the last 3 years, because the T20 challenge gets announced, say a month back, or just 15 days or 30 days or 45 days back, a lot of teams have committed their international tours. In the first year, we did not see South Africa. Second year, we did not see South Africa, Australia. Third year, we did not see again Australia. So do we see that, okay, there is a pre-planning? Okay, it's going to be a women's T20 challenge. I accept that this year is going to have a women's T20 challenge. Maybe next year we have a women's IPL. But do we fix that up in the next 2 months so that the tours do not clash for the other teams and we get the best
That's a
players?
very good question. I am not the board, but this is a question that at the earliest we should raise in the public domain to the powers that be, because that's a very good point. At the same time, I know for a fact that the moment this year's women's T20 challenge was announced, there were players who started getting in touch with our players. I'll name some of them. Danny Wyatt, for example, was in touch with some of our girls, asking Sophie Eccleston, Danny Wyatt, these people, Deandra Dottin, they started getting in touch with our girls, asking what are the details because they wanted to participate in the Indian tournament. So there is keenness. There is keenness to participate in the Indian tournament. So the earlier the BCCI makes this public, it will be easier for all of these boards and all of these girls to plan their calendar. Make no mistake, that's a very, very good point. And hopefully we will be able to put this out in the public domain. And the BCCI will also see reason in what you just mentioned, and that will be done.
So he's answered a lot of our questions. When is the Indian women's team likely to return? March, earliest, say Sri Lanka. We have been in,
Or
there are talks,
Bangladesh.
or Bangladesh. There are talks with England. We will play. So Australia and New Zealand did not happen right now, but it will happen just pre to the World Cup.
That is
What the
confirmed.
domestic, that is confirmed. So that is confirmed.
Yeah.
So we will play Australia and New Zealand just before the World Cup. It's kind of, you can say, the practice for the World Cup itself, because the matches will happen in the Trans-Tasman nations. When is the domestic calendar likely to resume? It will resume in February if everything goes well in the Syed Mushtaq Ali Trophy.
Correct.
We will maybe not have a break. There will be continuous domestic tournaments. Will How is the compensation plan going to work? He's answered that too. That there will be a lot. Everybody from under 16, under 19, under 23, or seniors, whichever tournaments do not happen, the players are likely to be compensated. Is there a planning for a full creation of a women's IPL? There will be a women's T20 challenge in 2021. 2022, we will all push for a women's IPL. How many teams women's IPL happens? That is yet to be seen. And the rumors around Test cricket, BCCI would want the Indian women's cricket team to play Test cricket as does Australia and England do. So we'll likely see Test cricket being resumed after a gap of 5 years. India last played in 2016.
14, right?
So,
14, right? We played last test match.
14 they played against England, 16 they played against South Africa. So 14 they played against both, right?
Yeah.
So after a period of 7 years, we will see Indian women's cricket team back on the track for Test cricket. So will a Mithali Raj or a Jhulan Goswami get to play in the whites again? So the answer is a potential
And both
yes.
are very excited, by the way. I've spoken to both, and both are super excited at the prospect of playing the test match. I can put this on record. Mithali will be on a show with me in January. And as I said, Jhulan and I are meeting for lunch on Monday. Both, when they heard that test match cricket is on the anvil, both were super keen and super excited that if it happens, 2021 will be so much better.
I think so, Boria, you have answered a lot of our questions and people's questions. So I think so that gives a lot of confidence that we will see Test cricket, we will see Indian women back on track for a domestic or an international tour this year as soon as possible. We will players who won't be able to play, whether it's any age group or senior tournament this year, will be compensated. And next year we will see a lot more cricket so that we have a good bench strength also at the same time. And the murmurs of Test cricket are true. Indian women most likely will play Test cricket in 2021.
Correct.
Thanks for all this, Buryada. It was lovely to have to be chatting with you on all these questions. Thank you very much. And here itself, we'll wrap it up. Thank you.
Pleasure, Yash. Pleasure. Once again, Merry Christmas to everyone. You know, our sort of combined goal is to further the game. There may be lapses on the board's part, on our part, on players' part, on some stakeholders' part, and we are also stakeholders. So let's all get together and create synergy, because by taking pot shots at each other, nothing will be achieved in a COVID-infested world. This is a different world. So that is why a Virat Kohli comes back for a paternity leave, can't go back and play test 3 and 4. Otherwise, he would have come for one test match. So keep that in mind. This is a different world. So let's all get together, because the most important thing is our girls have to play. If the men play, so will the women. If they don't, we will raise our voice. It's against the board, asking them questions, whatever it is. Our job is to raise our voice and ask the questions. Yash and his team will do that. So will I. I hope we will all get together and get women's cricket ahead in India in 21.
And if there are any more questions, we'll again get on a chat, something like this,
100%.
to answer all of them.
100%. You keep doing good work, Yash. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Thank you very much.
Bye. Bye.